Thank you so much. I'm going to keep my part very, very short before I hand the stage over to Maurits, which is why we're actually here. Just to give a little bit of a context of who we are and what we do. So OneSpan is a cybersecurity company that helps financial institutions secure their digital channels. So we provide advanced authentication, mobile application protection, and also transaction signing. So we protect billions of transactions and logins over the top of 60% of top 100 banks over the world. And last year, we announced our strategic partnership and investment in ThreatFabric, an Amsterdam-based company who is the leader in mobile threat intelligence and fraud detection. So with their device intelligence, malware intelligence, and behavioral analytics, we actually want to provide our customers a 360 and more complete protection against advanced fraud, such as social engineering or IPP fraud, for example, malware-aided attacks, and also other sophisticated attacks. So I'm going to hand the stage over to Maurits.
Thank you very much, Brian.
Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. In the next 15 minutes or so, I'm going to talk to you about how your fraud function is changing due to basically being under pressure from 3 different directions. But quite a lot to get through. I'll start off by telling you a little bit about who we are and what we do. Then explain why fraud prevention is under pressure from 3 different directions and how it's changing as a result. And then get to the meat of the matter, how mobile threat intelligence can help. And then I'll finish off with a couple of examples of the types of things that we are seeing out there. What are we seeing happening? What are the cyber criminals up to? So let's start by who we are and what we do. We help our customers unearth early risk indicators in online journeys and feed those risk indicators into existing transaction monitoring or risk engines to help them be more efficient and more effective at distinguishing legitimate interactions from illegitimate interactions. We do that by building software that you embed either in your website or in your mobile app that looks at the whole customer journey from when they apply to an account, from they authenticate, move through the app or website, and actually end up transacting. And our software looks at this from 2 different perspectives. We look at the device perspective for technical risks. Is there malware on the device? Is there a remote access tool on the device that's being used to control the device? Is the customer on call? These are the type of risk signals we look for in the device risk layer. And in that behavioral layer, we look at customer behavior. We look at, is the customer behaving similarly to how they behaved in previous sessions, i.e., are they still the same person? Are they behaving in a way that is actually reminiscent of how a fraudster would behave? So are they behaving like a fraudster? This is what we do. Now, in order to do that, we don't just build the software that does that. We've called that product FRS. We're really good at finding catchy product names. But we also have an entire team dedicated to finding out what the actual adversaries are up to. What are cyber criminals doing? What are they building? Who's talking to whom? Who's offering supporting services? Who's buying those services? What do attacks look like? Etc. And we really like this little feedback loop that we've built inside our organization. MTI, the Mobile Threat Intel team, their knowledge feeds into FRS. But at the same time, through FRS, we get very good feedback from our customers on what is actually hitting them. And that means that we can target the efforts of the MTI team to work on the topics that are relevant for our customers, what's active in their region, what's hitting them, what's hitting their peers, etc. And that feeds into their fraud protection setup. And that setup is changing. The world of anti-fraud is changing, and it's actually under pressure from 3 different directions simultaneously. The first direction, in this setting, I shall call Finovation. It is the enormous pace of innovation that's happening in the financial services industry. New products, new ways of doing payments, new apps are springing up all the time. This conference is a really good example of that. But that means that fraud, the anti-fraud function, has to evolve to keep up with this. Old certainties are disappearing. I think much discussion about how banks are shutting down branch offices. Well, many new entrants onto the field don't even bother with a physical presence. So old ways where you could call a customer in to have them physically appear are no longer an option. So anti-fraud has to find new ways of dealing with this. The second direction the pressure is coming from is from the cyber criminals, because they're seeing this and they are definitely using this and jumping on this pace of change to build new attacks, new ways of defrauding people, scamming them. And the final direction is regulation. Regulators around the world have looked at this for a number of years now, and with regulations like PSD2 and the upcoming PSD3 regulation, or the contingent reimbursement model here in the UK, it's very obvious that in more and more instances, the regulators are going to place an obligation on the financial industry to reimburse their customers for fraud. So no pressure on the anti-fraud function then. So how is the anti-fraud function responding to this? Well, one of the things that we're seeing is that they have a desire to become more proactive. And now the funny thing is that the same shift to a more proactive stance has been happening in cybersecurity for the past 10 to 15 years or so. So what we're seeing is that a lot of the lessons that were learned in cybersecurity are now being applied to the fraud function. One of those is taking the established cyber kill chain methodology and applying that to fraud, turning it into the fraud kill chain. The idea behind it is that you map out all the different steps involved in a fraud and then try and break that chain. See that as a chain of events that all need to happen for the criminal, for them to defraud someone. And what you do is you try and break that chain early and often. And the better you are at that, the better you are at making life difficult for fraudsters. The terminology is shift left and becoming more proactive. Don't wait until the last step. Go out there, find them where they operate, and frustrate them as much as you can. Now, this is where MTI becomes interesting, because if you want to become proactive, then threat intelligence is a really good way to do that. This is the little blurb about what we do. We spent a lot of time trying to figure out how do we summarize MTI in one sentence, and then one of our customers simply did it for us, saying you're the virus total on steroids for mobile threats. We analyze loads and loads of samples. We ingest them, analyze them, classify them, figure out who they're targeting, and build dashboards for our customers, write reports, but also assist with investigations. All to say, we're pretty deeply embedded in the whole mobile threat landscape. How customers typically use mobile threat intel is, well, the core mission of intelligence is always to support decision making. So the idea is good intel leads to good decisions lead to good outcomes. You can use that intel at strategic, tactical, operational layers. Strategic layer is, for instance, to build a fraud-driven, or intel-driven rather, fraud strategy, not the other way around. Operational, customer awareness, educating colleagues, and at the tactical level, you can use many of the technical IOCs that we collect to help detect actual presence of malware, for instance, on customer devices. Now, if you think, hang on a minute, we don't have the capability to detect malware on customer devices, we can help with that as well, back to the FRS product. So what are some of the things that we've been seeing lately that we think are kind of interesting and relevant to share with you? I'll start off with a very simple one. This is a graph of, we've been doing this for a while, this is a graph of the total number of malware families, mobile malware families that we see active in the wild. And one thing you can see, the graph trends upwards. Over the years, more and more malware families are appearing. What we can tell from this, a couple of things you can deduce from this. One, these actors do this for profit. So if they're doing this, it must be profitable for them. And if the increase is there for the longer term, it means that more actors are being drawn in and established players are sticking around. In short, this earns them money. If the number of families is increasing and actors are still earning good money, it stands to reason that the number of attacks and number of active kind of actors using these malware families to attack customers is also increasing, and the rest of the figures bear that out. Over the past couple of years, one of the more sought-after new features in mobile malware has been a device takeover capability. What is device takeover? Well, as the name implies, it is the ability for an actor to remotely control a device. Now, if a picture says more than 1,000 words, a moving picture must say a heck of a lot. This is a little demo video made by the author of the HookC malware to demonstrate one of the main new features in HookC was the ability to remote control devices. So he made a little video where he's demonstrating that from his desktop he is controlling a mobile device. He can do almost anything on that device as if he were holding it. The exception, of course, is things like Face ID or fingerprint IDs, because his finger and face aren't physically there. But anything that you can do while touching the device or manipulating the screen, the actor can do remotely. In a real attack, what they would do, by the way, is they put a little black overlay on the screen, meaning the screen would be black and you wouldn't see anything. They would still be able to see what was going on beneath. I think from that video, it's pretty easy to deduce why this is a really sought-after functionality for people looking to defraud victims. You basically wait until the victim is not using the phone. You can actually use the malware to check that it's dark in the room, that it's lying on that it's lying flat, and that it's charging, i.e., it's on your nightstand and you're asleep. You dip in and execute the fraud, and nobody's any the wiser. So that's DTO functionality. Another interesting little development that I wanted to share with you is that of Anatsa. Anatsa is a closed group. They write their own malware, and their particular speciality is that they have the ability to get Anatsa into Google Play consistently. They've been doing this for a number of years. They sneak it in, after a while it gets discovered and taken down, and then they just sneak in a fresh copy. It usually masquerades as little utilities. This is a PDF reader. They do QR code readers. They do file managers. They actually work. They're working PDF readers. Just base it on open source code. But then at some point it turns malicious. Not only do they get it into Google Play, but as you can see, they actually engage in SEO and promote their own stuff, and they get it quite high in the charts. Here they're ranking 4th for top free tools. And they do this pretty consistently. Most other malware, you get that by sideloading it. You get tricked into installing it. You don't get it from the official app stores. The exception is Anatsa. They really love Google Play. And then the final interesting development I wanted to share with you is that of Datsbro. Snazzy name. It's a recently discovered new DTO, device takeover capable malware family. But what is interesting is the way that Datsbro is spread. It is actually quite likely, based on source code analysis, Chinese in origin, but it is distributed. I've listened to some of the talks here. Apologies, ladies and gentlemen, no talk here is complete without mention of AI, so here it is. It is spread using, obviously, AI-generated campaigns on social media. Long-running campaigns that lure victims in, mostly targeted, as you can tell, at senior citizens. But the idea is they take a very long time to get to the point. The point being, they want you to install this malware. So we've had examples of senior trips, puzzle game, little communities that were set up. Older people join them, interact with them, and at some point get a question, please install this app. If you want to see what the cruise is like, we've got the app and it has all the timetables and all the other stuff. Sure it does. It also has Datsbro, allowing them to remotely control your device. So it's very interesting because this type of MO is more associated with romance and investment scams, where they try and lure you in and take a long time in doing this. So this seems like the scam center tactics are now being applied to malware spreading using AI, because we're not the only ones using AI. Cyber criminals are as well. They're finding all kinds of interesting uses for it. So this is an interesting crossover of behaviors, spreading malware using tactics normally associated with scams. So with 1 minute to go, I thought I wanted to summarize. The fraud prevention function is under pressure from 3 different directions. Relentless pace of innovation, cyber criminals who are hammering away trying to defraud customers, and also the regulator placing an obligation in more and more cases for banks and financial institutions to reimburse customers for fraud. In response, the fraud prevention function it needs to become and is becoming more proactive, borrowing lessons learned from cybersecurity, for instance, the fraud kill chain. But we would say that if you want to be proactive, mobile threat intel can certainly help. The malware problem in the background is growing and growing. Actors are always using new and innovative ways to defraud your customers, spread their malware, get people to fall for their lures, and then basically install the malware and lose money. With that, I wanted to say thank you for letting me bend your ear. If you do want to know more, please drop by the OneSpan booth. Be warned, I'm happy to talk malware all day. Thank you very much.